this is the latest greatest notifier. The brand is Notifier. That's what our company deals in the most. You know, these are, as I mentioned before, the fire alarm panels are just like cars. There's Fords, there's Chevys, there's Dodge. Well, pick one. We're the Ford. The other guys are the Chevy. So they all do the same thing. This is typically the type of panel you'll see in a high-rise building. Simply because it has capacity. It's basically it's a computer hanging on the wall, and different computers have different capacities and capabilities. You go into a very small building, you'll see a very small panel. Well, it's a pretty good sized building, so this is what we need. This will do. It's called an NFS 3030, and it's called a 3030 because that's how many devices you can put on it. You can put approximately 3,000 fire alarm devices on it. Now you split that in half between detectors and what we refer to as modules. A module is anything that's not a smoke detector, a heat detector, which would be most typically a pull station. Another example would be the water flow switches that are on the sprinkler system. Is everybody familiar with the water flow switch? Briefly, water's flowing through a sprinkler pipe. There's a rubber paddle inside that pipe, and just like a canoe paddle, water starts moving through that pipe, and it moves that paddle and closes the switch and sends an alarm to the panel, just like a pull station or a smoke detector. So those are the two types of alarms you can get. We already talked earlier about the flashing green, flashing red. Anything that goes into alarm will be red. That's all there is to it. Red is alarm. The green flashing is just something that we were talking about earlier. Something. Yes, solid red. Yes. Anything that's blinking is not an alarm. There may be an exception to that. Not that I can think of right off the top of my head. So anyway,
color doesn't matter.
Color does not matter.
So if it's blinking, it's
it's
normal. Not in it. It's normal.
If it's blinking, it's
red or
normal.
green.
Correct.
Okay.
This building actually, I believe everything, I can't really smoke detector right there, should be blinking green, because I believe this was all put in when this was put in, all new devices, simply because there was another brand of panel in here before this one. Chevy, once again, Chevy parts aren't compatible with Ford, so if you change this to a new brand, you make this a Ford instead of a Chevy, you got to put Ford parts in all the way up the building. You can't mix and match. They just don't work together.
There are just a few companies that do this, so you're going to run across one of three or different.
Well, it's like everything else. Once again, I keep going back to the car example. The ones you hear about every day. You ask almost anybody, name 3 car manufacturers, and around here they'll go Ford, Chevy, Dodge. But you know good and well there's dozens more. No, there are many manufacturers around the world. Like I said, this is sold around the world. You could go to Japan and see this. Same thing hanging in the hotel you're staying in.
So Paul, when we were downstairs, you said that the smoke detectors are common. You don't have to change out the smoke detectors just because you're getting a new alarm panel?
Yes, you do.
Oh, you do?
If it's a different brand.
Okay.
It has to be the same manufacturer.
Okay.
Because they're just not made. All those smoke detectors, the panel, it all has software in it, just like a computer.
Okay.
It all has to be compatible. What I was referring to downstairs is, let's say this were an older notifier panel, and we do that all the time. Have the predecessor to this one in buildings, still have them in buildings all over town, which was a 2020. I said this is a 3030. That one was a 2020. Well, just like everything else, it gets smaller and faster and bigger, but capability is bigger. 2020 would only do 2,000 devices. This one does 3,000 approximately.
Oh.
So that's where it gets its name from. But you could put the old smoke detectors that work with the old panel can stay.
Oh.
If you replace the old notifier with the new notifier.
Okay.
In this building, in this particular building, since it was a completely different manufacturer, they just decided they wanted to go with something else completely. Everything's brand new.
Okay.
So, everything should be, so just, you see the pull station right here flashing green.
Flashing green.
All right, so get to the buttons on the thing. Every one of these, even though the panel looks exactly the same, picture this as a fingerprint. There are no two buildings that are programmed exactly the same. Everybody has their own specifications, different codes in different jurisdictions, different special needs because of the shape of the building, whatever it may be. So, like I said, I compare it to a fingerprint. Even though it looks exactly like the one you'll go to in the building next door, the programming can be completely different. So, but the one thing that will stay the same is how you, I don't know what to do with this door because I don't want to get a reflection when I'm pointing at things, y'all can't see what I'm talking about.
You can open it all the way up, we can still see. Most of it. No, you're good, right?
Okay, so we see all systems normal here. That's what you want to see all the time. Just a green light, no problems, no troubles. I will start out by saying, in defense of people like myself, sometimes y'all walk into a building and there's a yellow light on the panel, indicating there's a trouble on the system. Trouble can be anything. This is the only system in any building that tells on itself for the smallest thing that goes wrong. It can be something just totally insignificant, not going to impair the system, but you don't know that until you look at it and somebody like myself determines, okay, let's put that on the back burner, we've got bigger things to take care of. But imagine if a building like this had a buzzer or a beeper or a bell on their electrical system, for example. Every time a light bulb burned out in this place, you'd have a buzzer in the management office going off. Well, if that were the case, or the plumbers, every time y'all had a leaky faucet or a leaky toilet in here, you had a bell go off. Well, then everybody hate their plumbers and electricians as much as they hate us. You know how many times I hear, "Oh, y'all are back again"? Well, this thing tells on itself for every single little bitty thing that can go wrong.
You want your system to work?
Exactly, right? So, I'm going to start in just by explaining some of the lights on here. I know these are pretty small over here. Start out the top, you just have that green power light, and then they go down in priority. This thing, priority is the name of the game with this thing. Highest priority, of course, is a fire alarm. So, whenever there's a fire alarm, this red light, right here it says fire alarm, would flashing, it will come up and it will tell you exactly where if we've done our jobs right, it will tell you exactly where that fire alarm is coming from. 3rd floor smoke detector in front of men's restroom, just for example. We try our best to get the labels right and keep them that way. Of course, a building like this are constantly remodeling, adding detectors, taking them away because they built a wall, and all of a sudden you have a smoke detector in a room closet this big. And you don't really need that, so you're going to take it out and either move it someplace where it's more useful or just take it out altogether.
Y'all try and put it just in plain language like you just did?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And I've tried hard to do that for years. I try not to use, personally, I try not to use too many room numbers unless it's obvious. You know, suite, y'all have a pretty good idea that suite 300 is on the 3rd floor. That's pretty standard in any building you go to. So, but suite 300 might be half the floor. So we say suite 300 in break room, something like that. We can only do so much. That's where I guess it's kind of up to y'all to be a little bit familiar with the buildings you're in.
Now, is that common for other manufacturers or?
Yes, because they're custom labels. We can put in if it benefits the end user, whether it's fire department or the building
Right.
management. Try to put something in there that y'all understand. I'm not here all the time. I'll call it whatever you want me to. I call it what's gonna be most useful and get you there the quickest. So, after fire alarm, we have a pre-alarm. This, once again, newer, like everything else, there's a newer bell and whistle than there was 15 years ago. So as a pre-alarm, and let's just for example, our biggest example when that goes off is when there's construction in a building and they may be sweeping up sheetrock dust. Just a little bit of dust gets up to that smoke, kind of tickles its nose, and you have that. That's an opportunity, that pre-alarm, for somebody to get up there and say, hey, stop sweeping. Or pull that head down before it does go into alarm and empty out the building.
And who would get the pre-alarm?
Who would get it just comes up on the panel. It does not come in, it does not.
Does not
Pre-alarms
transmit.
It
don't
does
alert
not
the fire
transmit,
department.
no, y'all wouldn't be rolling on
Just be
a
the
pre-alarm, absolutely,
building
yes.
maintenance or whatever.
Exactly.
Whoever's in this room.
It's local, yes. There's no need for y'all to be there yet, because if it's bad enough, if it actually is, say, just a little bit of smoke from fire down the hallway that tickled that detector's nose, it can go from pre-alarm to alarm in 5 seconds or less, if the situation calls for it. So then, all the mechanisms will spring into action, y'all get caught. So, we have a security light on here. This is also a UL listed security panel. You can use this for the security system in the entire building. Don't do it very much because everybody likes to specialize. They like to have the fire alarm over here, their security over here. And kind of makes sense because between the fire alarm and the security in larger buildings, it would eat up space. Told you this would be 3,000 points. Well, if you had the contacts on your windows and doors, just like you do the burglar alarm in your house, well, that's a point. And if you use all that up, you'd have less space for so now you don't have enough space for your fire alarm and your security. So, for the most part, people keep separated, but it is capable of being a security system. Okay, the next one down, supervisory. That probably 99% of the time, that pertains to monitoring the fire sprinkler. Because we talked about the water flow switches just a minute ago. We also have tamper switches, which are on the valves of the fire sprinkler system. And somebody a long time ago, fireman someplace decided that we want a unique signal for if somebody's messing with a fire sprinkler valve. And the reality, I hate giving this example, but it's reality. You have a tenant in this building, a disgruntled employee or something like that, somebody that just got fired, and they happen to know where the valves are at in your stairwell. And the last thing they do, their last act before they leave the building forever is they go in, they shut the valve off, light a match, and walk away. You don't have sprinkler water. So the panel's gonna tell you every time somebody
So that
is closing
supervisor's a
that
tamper
valve.
switch, a tamper alarm.
Correct, and you can also use it, I explain the supervisory as a high-level trouble. I said just a minute ago that there are troubles that are very, to me, coming in and looking at it, okay, that's fine, I'll take care of that, no big deal. Think of a supervisory as a high-level trouble. That's get your butt out of the chair and go see what's going on, because it could be something like that. And you can use a supervisor for anything you want to. Just for example, the other thing that we see it used for is water rising. You have water monitors saying a mechanical line. A leak on a water line in a mechanical line. We'll put modules down low to the ground, about this far off the ground. If the water raises that much, it has little contacts that are on the ground, and when the water touches, like this, when the water touches them, it shorts together just as if you would pull that pull station that closes the contact and sends a signal. Well, for something like that, you don't want it to be an alarm. I don't need to show up because they have a water leak. We program it as a supervisory. Everything I'm talking about is programmable. How do you want the signal to come into the panel? Do you want it to be an alarm? Do you want it to be a supervisory? Do you want it to be a trouble? You want it to be a security point. Every once in a while, we'll use a security point. Right here's a perfect example. They might have a panic switch underneath the desk here, and that may come in as a security point. It locks down. all the doors. Or I've even done it in some buildings where we'll recall the elevators to the second floor, so a crazy person can't run in that door and jump on the elevator and head up into the building, who knows where. They hit that button, the elevators close up, go up to the second floor and lock down, just as if the firewall did that. So, once again, this thing's a fingerprint. You can hardly come up with a scenario that we can't make it do. I'll tell people all the time, I'll make this thing grow legs and go jump in the bayou down the street, put out the fire if you want me to. All it takes is money. So we can
By
do that.
golly, have them spend it.
Yeah. But, so, yeah, supervisory high-level trouble. That's something you need to get up and look at right away. It was made a supervisor, not important enough to call y'all, but important enough to get out of your chair and go look at it right now. Yeah. You know, they have a trouble that comes up here and says the batteries are low in a box up in the building. Building maintenance can say, okay, I've got batteries down there, I'll take care of that here in a little bit. Because most buildings, batteries are required and everything. See these batteries right here, bigger than most car batteries, are running this. Batteries are required to, we size them, you know, you can see batteries anywhere from this size up to things like this and even bigger. We size them by how much equipment they're running when the power goes out. They're required to run 24 hours on standby. So in other words, when the panel's all normal, just like this, power goes out right now, 24 hours from now, it's still gonna be going. And the reality is, we'll probably go, if those are new batteries, they can go a week. But the main thing is they're required to last, no matter what they're powering, they're required to last 15 minutes and along. Because you're gonna suck a whole lot more juice when the speakers are turned on and every light in the place is flashing and everything. Obviously, it's sucking a lot more juice. 15 minutes should be adequate time to empty a building when it's in along.
So those batteries control smoke detectors or?
Well, actually, they do, yes. Because all the smoke detectors, all your pull stations are run from the data lines that come from inside here. So yes, these
These are hardwired, the smoke detectors. So
No, sir, those are a data line. Old school, they were hardwired. You were absolutely correct, but the main panel still had to provide the power to those smoke detectors. Once again, with exception, every system's a little bit different, but most any panel you come up to, the fire alarm panel at the main fire alarm panel like you have here is powering all the smoke detectors and pull stations in the building. Building's big enough, sometimes 3,000 points isn't enough. There are some buildings here in town where we have, just because of sheer size, we have 3 of these panels networked together. Yeah, it gets pretty big to chew on sometimes. The funny thing is, you have some networks that are a perfect example. Rice University. They just said we want a panel in every building, even though we could have set it up to where one of these does 4, 5, 6 buildings. They said, nope, that's going to get too confusing. We're putting an individual panel in every building out there. Their network is, gosh, I don't even know, 40, 50, maybe even more panels. And we have remote enunciators, remote controls, if you will, on our particular brand. Remote control looks just like this. You may go into the facilities office or, in their case, the police station at Rice, the Rice Police. They have one of these in their office. And this one right here is going to tell you what's happening on this panel. Theirs will tell you what's happening in all 40 or 50 panels. It will come up and it will say such and such building, and then the description of where the panel is coming, where the alarm is coming, inside that building. Just a way to have a central location for whoever's watching it to know exactly where it's coming from, because they're covering a lot bigger area than just one building. So, of course, we have, so back to the lights, we have a system trouble light. anything, once again, anything that happens, if these batteries go weak, it'll come up and tell you. Anything, you knock a smoke detector, somebody's carrying a ladder through here, knocks a smoke detector off the ceiling, or knocks a strobe light off the wall. Everything we do is supervised. It's just how we set the circuit up. You break the circuit, you're gonna see it here.
Now, troubles will go out to where we'll receive that too?
Fire department does not, the only thing you receive or you get a call from a monitoring company is fire alarm. You don't need to come over here to see their bad batteries. You've got other things to do. So.
Like if it was like you said, they hit a head and knocked it off, is that still gonna be?
No, it's not gonna go into alarm. That's just something, pretty much hopefully whoever has that ladder will use it to, pick the smoke detector off the floor and snap it back in. When you put it back to normal, the panel goes back to normal. Most things that we do, once you fix the problem, the panel goes back to normal by itself. No recess. The only thing, unless once again there's special programming, the only thing that you need to physically hit the reset button for is fire alarm. Mainly because y'all want to see, in my experience, y'all went to the trouble to get your truck out and come over here. You hate coming and seeing a green light when you get here. So why are we here? So pretty much most building management instructs their people to let y'all reset, let y'all see where the problem is coming from. Maybe go up there and take a look at it, and you get up there and go, yeah, I smell burnt popcorn. I see what happened here, and you turn around and hit the reset button and go home. So, but most people will not hit the reset button. Now, brings me to another button we have on here. Up here at the top, I know it's small back there, this top red button says acknowledge. This is something, or some variation, once again, that you're gonna see on any panel you come to. And what that's telling you is that you acknowledge whatever it is beeping on the panel, whatever made it beep. Once again, whether it's a trouble, whether it's a supervisory, whether it's a fire alarm. And this is something that I kind of have a problem with, and I'll tell y'all in case, especially you, since you deal with a lot of people, there are a lot of building management and instructor people, namely security sitting right here 4 feet away from this panel, that tell them, don't touch anything. That's not great advice, and here's the reason why. Okay. The first thing it does, the panel's beeping. Let's make it the real deal. Let's make it a fire alarm. Fire alarm comes in. This person says, well, I was told not to touch it. This acknowledge button, it does 2 things. Number one, it stops the panel from beeping in your face. You have a fire alarm, your heart rate already jumped. You hit that acknowledge button and it shuts the panel up from beeping in your face, so you can concentrate on what you're trying to read and what you're trying to do, who you need to call, whatever it may be. The second thing it does is it puts a timestamp. This thing has a history. It tells you every single thing that this panel does. It records it. If there's trouble, and when that trouble cleared, if there's a fire alarm, when that fire alarm cleared, and when it was acknowledged. Now, once again, kind of like the example I gave with the sprinkler valves, I hate to give the example, but it's the reality. And I've kind of been involved in that over the years, been involved in this. Something bad happens in this building. Really bad. People get hurt. Good chance it's going to go to court. A good lawyer knows the first thing to ask for is the history off of this panel. So what they're going to do is they're going to get people on the stand, and they're going to say, well, I see the fire alarm came in at 12 o'clock, but the next thing in history, if somebody's instructed not to do anything, and y'all come in and do y'all's thing, and this thing has been beeping the whole time, and everybody running straight up to where it says the problem's at, and y'all get the fire put out in, let's say, an hour, everything's under control. They're going to say, well, the next thing I see is nobody even looked at that panel for an hour. It says, do y'all come down and say, okay, everything's under control, now I'm going to hit the reset, the acknowledge and the reset. Well, the facts, the piece of paper shows everybody that there was a gap. It looks like nobody did anything for an hour. That's not good. It doesn't look good in court. So, my recommendation is teach people like this to read it and hit the acknowledge button, because it looks much better when it says the alarm came in at 12 o'clock and it was acknowledged at 12:01. Helps a whole lot. That means somebody was aware of what was going on and there's things being done. So
All that does is stop the beeping.
it stops the beeping and puts a timestamp on the history on the panel, which is in the big picture the
Yeah.
more important
Right, right.
thing to a building manager.
So nobody
like
has to be
this.
worried about hitting that button if they're resetting it or messing things up.
Right, right. You're not gonna hurt a thing by hitting that acknowledge button. That's.
Does it timestamp every time acknowledge is hit, or just the first time?
Depends on the system and how it's set up. It's a good question. Yeah, you can look at a printer in some buildings. We don't have a printer in here. Yeah, you can see where an acknowledge button was, somebody's pumping it.
Yeah.
to get it to stop. It doesn't work that way. Most panels hear you the first time. Hit it,
Well,
just touch it once and it's gonna.
If this smoke detector goes off, it's gonna be beeping, we hit acknowledge. Now, a smoke detector further down starts going off, is it gonna
It
start
would-
beeping again, and you would have to hit acknowledge again?
Absolutely, it will
Okay.
resound. Not only will the panel start beeping again, if you use which brings us down to the next button. If you hit acknowledge and then the signal silence, that's the difference between these two. A lot of people come in and hit the signal silence button. Signal silence refers to the bells and whistles out in the building. Acknowledge is the beeping of the panel. Signal silence is the notification devices out in the building.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, so, but if you do have a second alarm, if there's enough smoke to set a smoke detector off down the hallway from the first one, we have a program to resound. It starts over again. And say one other thing about the acknowledge. If there is, doesn't have a whole lot to do with y'all, but just to distinguish the two, and I'm honestly not sure why it's set up this way, but it is. Let's say somebody cut one of our data lines going to a whole bunch of devices. All of a sudden, you have 100 troubles on this panel all at one time. And they all come in and they'll report it's a computer, 100 devices in trouble. As soon as you cut that line, 5 seconds later, they've all reported to the panel. It's not like you have to sit there and wait 2 or 3 minutes for them all to come in. This 5-10 seconds, they've all reported in as they're not talking to the panel anymore. You hit that acknowledge button one time and it will shut the beacon up. Fire alarm. If you do have something that would set off multiple alarms, you're gonna have on this screen, in addition to this button, this button will still work the same exact way, but it's gonna come up and it's gonna be flashing. It says acknowledge fire alarm. You have to push that, either that button, which will be, if you can see all these black buttons right here have arrows, and one of these, I believe it's this middle one here, says acknowledge fire alarm. You can push that black button right next to where it's flashing, or you can use the same one that's always here. They both do the same thing. But you have to push the button one time for every alarm that comes in. So troubles, you'll even see it when troubles, my 100 trouble example, it will say block acknowledge. You're not blocking anything. What it's saying is you're acknowledging a block of troubles all at one time. So you'll see this say block acknowledge. Fire alarm, you have to push acknowledge one time for every alarm that comes in.
You got 10 alarms, you're pushing acknowledge 10 times.
Correct, that's right. And once again, when you're using this for y'all's benefit, when you're using this, you don't hit that button as fast as you can. You do it steady. You hit it once and watch the screen. You're gonna acknowledge the first alarm that came in is gonna be up here in this top section. Read it. You take the time to read it and say, okay, acknowledge, because as soon as you hit that acknowledge button, it's gonna move to the next alarm. And just take a second to read it. So you're doing a smooth, steady acknowledge. Don't just sit there and punch it like this. You're gonna get confused on
Is there a way
where
to
things
get-
are going on at.
Is there a way to get a printout of the alarms for like fire department? Because like if we come in and there's a fire, or I'll send the crews up, it's like, hey, it's showing detector on 4th floor outside men's bathroom. And 4th floor, whatever, suite.
Right,
this
down the
suite,
hallway from
Down
the
the
first
hallway,
one.
down the hallway, 5th floor, down the hallway. and it's like, okay, cause we put that in our report. This alarm is activated, that alarm is activated, that alarm is activated.
Okay, so we don't, in this particular building, not a printer, don't know why, it's not,
Okay.
it's not particularly required, it's more of a luxury.
We just write the alarm down or take a
Well,
picture
no,
of the
no, no,
screen.
well, if you haven't reset, there's, if you haven't reset, let's move down a few buttons. We already all know about the reset button, pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so you come down here, and you have this button right here. I skipped over one button, I'll get back to that in just a second. It says fire alarm, scroll display. So if you've acknowledged all the fire alarms, you have 10 alarms that came in, and you've already acknowledged all of them, like we just talked about. You can push this button, and it's gonna scroll through each one. If you wanna jot them down
Okay.
until you get back around to the first one, you can do that. You can do the
Will
same.
they do that initially when you first come in here and see that there's an alarm? You'll know that there's 10 or more or just one?
Yes, you have an event count on here.
Okay.
They're right underneath where the first alarm that came in is up there. That's the only alarm you're gonna be able to read about until you hit the acknowledge button. Then it's gonna show you the second one. Hit acknowledge again, it's gonna show you the third one, all the way down the list. But down underneath it, there's an events count display. Let's see if I can get there. So when it doesn't have our logo on the front of it, here's what you're gonna see. I don't know how good y'all can see that. But it says fire alarm, it says fire alarm 0, supervisory signals 0, trouble 0, disables 0. Disables, jumping ahead just a little bit. We have times, building management have times, you have times when you need to disable stuff. You wanna do work that might set off an alarm, but you don't wanna empty your building just because you're up there changing out a smoke detector head. You disable, and it will give you a count of how many devices you pushed one button or did whatever you're gonna do in programming to disable the speakers or the strobe lights. It will tell you how many of those devices are disabled, and you wanna know, wow, did the first floor speakers get disabled? This button, this last one down here that says scroll display, it says other events. Disables is an other. So you can scroll through there and you can see everything that's disabled. So, but anyway, here's your event count display. When the alarm goes off, first alarm is gonna be up here. The next thing you're gonna see is how many alarms. And that's how you know that it's not just that one. Fire alarms didn't say one, it says 10. It's like, uh-oh.
That was the events button?
Well, that'll come up automatically.
Yeah, this screen will come up. I put it there. This thing has menus. But this is what's gonna come up. This screen is what's gonna come up when an alarm or a trouble for that matter. I mean, anything comes in on this panel. That's what's gonna come up. So.
That's what I was thinking. If you come in here and you've got 10 or more alarms or something like that, you might.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's y'all's experience. If you see one, you probably, I hate to say it, the first thing you think is somebody burning popcorn up there.
Sure.
You see 10, yeah, you might.
They just
Can
got
y'all
lost.
call for a couple more guys, please?
Yeah.
So that's the reality. It kind of gives you a heads up immediately without reading anything what you're dealing with. One alarm as opposed to 10 or 20 or however. And then, like I said, just more for the benefit of the building maintenance and service people that come in here to work on it. They'll tell you the number of troubles you have on the panel. That wire gets cut I was telling you about. You'll see, who knows how many troubles come up here depending on what wire got cut. Supervisories, and you can scroll through them specifically and see if you have 5 supervisories, you can use that button to scroll through those just like you're on the fire alarm. You can look at every one of them, and when it gets to the bottom of the list, we'll just go right back to the top. And once again, when you're on this screen, you see that there's some redundant buttons. Just for example, right here here's a signal silence button, just like the signal silence button here. Here's a system reset button, just like the reset button there. Does not matter which one you use. They both do the same thing. It's kind of redundant. They just want to make sure you don't miss it. You have a couple of opportunities. There's no difference between the two. I'm asked that all the time. When do I need to push the red one and when do I need to push the black one that has the writing beside it? Doesn't matter. Usually either one your finger's closer to. So moving on down. So really, that's pretty much it on these, for these, tell people all the time, don't wanna be mean or anything. These things are not particularly, user-friendly is not really the good term, but I'll use it. There's not a lot that you can do on this panel where you're gonna stand right in this spot and put the fire out. It ain't gonna happen. This thing is to tell you what's happening, not to tell you how to do your job. It gives you what the scenario is. You all take it from there. That's what it's there for. So same with building management, same with everybody else. It tells you where the problem's at and you handle it accordingly.
We've got a guy comes in, first day, doesn't know anything. Well, I mean, a lot of us no matter. But we've got a fire up there. Are there any buttons that they're gonna hit to silence it, to reset it, that are gonna, now if you got a fire and you reset it, it should
Re-alarm.
re-alarm. But is there any
That's
way that they're gonna break it so that,
Botching up too bad.
yeah,
No.
that we're not getting the alarm anymore?
You could, the only thing that I can think of is if you hit the signal silence button. Now, there is kind of glazed over that, but that's a good question, because that lets me bring this up. Once again, acknowledge up here is the panel, stop the panel from beeping in your face. Signal silence, it shuts up any alarms that turned on as a result of whatever alarm in the building came on. We have, typically, we do in a high rise, we do 3-floor program. Where floor of incident, floor above, floor below go off. Now, I think at one time, honestly, I'm not sure since we're in your jurisdiction, at one time, this had a general alarm where the whole building went off. I don't know if we went away from that or not. That was requested, I don't know if before your time, or I have no idea. I just remember vaguely, I'm an old guy, I've been doing this a long time, I don't have everything memorized.
So the 5th floor, there's one fire alarm going off. It's in a closet. Somebody hits silence, signal silence, it's gonna turn that off. And are we never gonna hear about it again until fire comes blowing out of that closet? And it
That's
sets
what
off
I'm
another
sorry I
alarm?
got off on a little bit of a tangent, but that's, they have kind of a built-in safety for that.
We need.
But, okay, well,
Couple of
you
those there.
want, once again, first thing you wanna do is acknowledge, well, if it's just one, if nothing else, you want the beeping to stop, stop beeping in your face. If you try to jump down here and hit signal
Yeah, no,
silence,
it's the
first
signal.
you shut
The signal silence sounds like the dangerous button to me. If you're shutting it off at the source,
but it will not shut off until you hit the acknowledge button. And you should have a message that comes up and tells you specifically, signals cannot be silenced until all events have been acknowledged. So you try to hit that when there's still an alarm out there and you hadn't hit the acknowledge button. You hit silence thinking it's gonna stop just from beeping in your face. It's not gonna let you do it, so therefore the stuff upstairs is not gonna get turned off. Now you can hit acknowledge and then hit signal silence again, but most people are just trying to stop the beeping in their face initially, so why would you hit acknowledge, it stops beeping, and then wanna hit the signal silence too?
yeah, I don't want to stop the signal upstairs. I want that to go on for an hour if that's what it takes.
And there is, there's so many things and the code that we go by is just like every code, electrical, sprinkler, whatever it may be, you can take one paragraph and a group this big can argue it for a week. Just every single line, and the books are this thick, so, it's all gray, it's all opinion. That's why people like you come out and say, well, I have a special circumstance, and that's why why page 1 of every code book says, you need to do what this book says unless the authority having jurisdiction says otherwise. And that one sentence wipes out the whole book. If you want it to do so, if they say zig and you say, no, I want it to zag, it's gonna zag. Because you're the one that has your face in it and knows what's going on, and say, no, that's not gonna work in my building. Make it do this. It's just that simple. So that's pretty much it for this. As far as the signal silence goes, there's two camps. One says that everything should shut off. That's kind of new, because basically the people in your building, the tenants, they only see two things when an alarm goes off. speakers turn on and are making noise, and strobes are flashing. I'm a fan of leaving the strobes, even after you hit this signal silence, the strobes continue to flash. That,
Does that turn does the
Because-
signal silence turn the strobes off?
every building's different.
Yeah,
I would have to
it's
look at the
different.
programming to see what this particular building
Okay.
does. But I'm a fan of leaving the strobes flashing,
Sure.
because it's been proven that y'all have heard this before. It's obnoxious. It's made to get attention, or you have people in the building saying, it's too loud. Well, it's not supposed to lull you to sleep.
Yeah.
It's loud and obnoxious for a reason. It's to get your attention. So, shut that off, because it has been proven in the past that can, if it keeps going for too long, can induce panic. So you're gonna all of a sudden, everybody's gonna stop listening to any kind of instruction or that, and just kind of do whatever they want to, run downstairs, jump out windows, whatever. But, in my opinion, if you hit that signal silence button and shut off that obnoxious noise, but you still have lights flashing, that tells people, okay, relax a little bit, but stay on your toes. The lights are still flashing, there's still something going on. That's the way I like it. The newer thought is, well, ADA, well, if the hearing part of it turns off, the seeing part of it needs to go off too, because that can be prejudice from one person to another. It's like, let's see, so if somebody didn't help the blind guy out after the lights or the speakers turn off, they must not like you. So anyway, that's
So-
another thing. So
I'm a little unclear about what okay, so we acknowledge it. If we hit silence and it silence the alarms, if we have another alarm going off either further down the hall or on another floor, it's a whole new alarm.
yes, sir. Exactly.
It's a whole new alarm,
If
so it'll-
you already determined, okay, we can
We know where
we
it's
can
at, we
shut
know
off
what's
the
going
bells and
on, we
whistles
can-
but then another one goes off down the hallway, absolutely. It's gonna start all over again.
So it's just going to, if you, just like they acknowledge, you're only silencing that one particular alarm.
That event.
Right, right.
Yes.
You silence it, and then a minute later, it goes off again, it's like, meh, it's
Right.
maybe growing, because it's got to another
They've got
section.
another-
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly. Or the actual problem, y'all may not have found the actual problem. Let's say, for example, a fire's in a mechanical room, and the air conditioning in the building sucked it up and blew it out a vent that's close to a smoke detector. That's the first one to go off.
Right.
And then because of the airflow while it's running, it got out onto the floor. That alarm went off first. Well, one thing that's going to happen whenever an alarm goes off on a floor is the air conditioning, the air handlers on that floor are going to go off. Now, I said that floor. If you're familiar with high-rise, everybody gets the 3-floor programming I was talking about in their head. If the alarm goes off on the floor, the speakers and strobes on the floor below it and the floor above it are going to go off. That's the 3-floor programming. Doors are going to unlock on the floor below and the floor above. That's just the standard for high-rise. The exception to that is the air handlers. Only on the floor of incident, air handlers are going to shut off. The reason for that is that what you're trying to do is contain the smoke to the floor of incident. So what happens is if you do 3-floor programming on your air handlers, what's going to happen is the pressure is going to equalize on all those floors. What is the smoke going to do? It's going to go like this, and then it's going to continue to spread. This floor is going to go off, and it's going to shut off another floor. And in theory, you could have smoke all the way up and down this building. You keep it pressurized. Everything above and everything below is still running. It's in theory keeping the smoke contained where the alarm is at. So that's why, and I have a lot of building engineers and people tell me, hey, well, when we did our fire drill, only the air handler on the floor where we pulled the pull station for the drill shut off. And I said, exactly, thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
It's working.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's supposed to do.
So on signal silence, is there a timer? Will it only stay silenced for 10 minutes or 5 minutes?
That's programmable also. We
Okay.
very rarely use that.
Okay.
But yes, there are situations where you can have a signal inhibitor. It's in our programming, and I can say, yep, if a alarm goes off on the first floor, let it run for 90 seconds and shut it off. I've been doing
Well,
this
no,
a long
if
time.
I hit signal silence and say, okay, the system isn't reset in 10 minutes, will
Yes,
it go off
yes,
again?
you're basically talking about the reverse of what I just
Yeah,
said.
exactly,
Yes,
yeah.
that's also programmable.
Okay.
It can come back
It's
on
not
in a
standard,
certain
but
amount
it's
of time.
programmable.
It's just hard to find a scenario, but once
Yeah.
again, the bottom line is, this panel is used all over the world, it's used in industrial facilities, it's just, some of it's mind-boggling what people
Do whatever you want.
need, or what they think they need, you know, and it can, we can set it up to, not only do fire alarms, to do, tornado alerts, intrusion alerts, things like that. Hit one button and tell everybody to dive under the desk and lock their doors, you know, or run into the bathroom because it's the safest part of the building. Just all kinds of things. Cascading, alarms. Just for example, down at most of the hospitals down in the medical center, you don't just get the same pre-recorded alarm like you do in this building. You get an alarm that says an alarm has been reported on the second floor. This one is just an alarm has been reported. That's it. But for whatever reason, they feel it necessary to tell everybody exactly where the alarm's coming from. Namely because they have patients and move and things like that. People in here don't. They just grab their purse and head for the stairwell. They've got a lot more things that they need to do in the same alarm. So it's programmable to do just all kinds of things. But yes, there is a mechanism in there where if you hit the signal silence, if the reset hadn't been hit in an X amount of time, it will reset. Yes. Since we're talking about the sound and resounding, so this is the fire alarm panel up here. This is the speaker system. Just like it says right here, digital voice command. We call it DVC on ours. Once again, the Chevy guys are going to call it something else, but it's all pretty much going to work the same way. So if you have something to say in addition to what the pre-recorded message, if you need to give specific information to whatever floors are in a alarm, where you have all these buttons. You have one button for every floor in the building, probably plus a couple. Just for example, the stairwells. Each stairwell may have a speaker circuit in it. We typically don't put the fire alarm on the stairs because that's where everybody's going. And if you think the sound is bad when you're out on your floor, get inside a concrete box with those things blaring. You're gonna have people bouncing off the walls. So the stairwell speakers typically don't participate in any alarm that comes on automatically. But on the other hand, you hit the all call button. Either you use, I'm not sure what we have here. There should be a stairwell speaker here someplace. Maybe, maybe not. Oh yeah, here we go. So stair one is stair two. If you have something to say to the people inside the stairwell, you're going to push that button that says stairwell. If you are, or if you want to say it to the whole building, emergency's over, you can go back upstairs to your office or whatever you want. Let everybody, reassure everybody, okay, we got it under control. False alarm, sorry folks. And so you can use the all call to talk to the whole building, or pick whichever floors you want to talk to. In my opinion, it's better just to go ahead and talk to everybody, because the only thing that's worse than for a tenant than being on a floor that's in alarm is being a few floors down and hearing an alarm off in the distance, because you have elevator shafts, you have stairwells. It's not soundproof from floor to floor. So you're 3 or 4 floors down and you hear an alarm off in the distance and you go, what am I supposed to do? So you tend to talk to everybody. If that's not an option, if you don't want to do that on this particular system, Okay, so we have the 3-floor programming, 4th-floor alarm. So 3, 4, and 5 are going off. You want to give special instructions to those people, and the people that don't have the alarm don't need to hear this. We have a button right here that says page active evacuation areas. You hit that button, and instead of having to come over here and find the button for 3, 4, and 5, you hit that, and you're gonna talk to the people that are hearing the alarms on their floors. Just the opposite. Down here, you have one that says page inactive areas, which can be kind of important. It kind of goes back to what I just said. Let the automatic alarm, and it will, this system will continue to do the pre-recorded message on the 3 alarm floors. You can hit this button, that's gonna keep going on those 3 floors, and you can pick up this microphone, hit this button right here that says page inactive areas, and you can tell the rest of the building what's going on. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an alarm on the 4th floor. There's no need for any action on your part at this time. Whatever you wanna say, I'll leave that up to y'all. But you can kind of give them a heads up what's going on and where the problem's coming from. Kind of puts the rest of the building at ease, because they are gonna hear the alarm. If it's quiet down in the basement, they'll hear it coming from the top floor under the right conditions, and that's, like I said, that can be more unnerving than being on a floor that's in alarm. If you're on a floor that's in alarm, you're either gonna smell smoke or you're not. Something like that. If you don't smell smoke, you're a little bit more at ease, even though you're alarmed. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So, speaker system, you wanna make any kind of announcement, whether you're in alarm or not, hit the on-call button. You're gonna talk to everybody in the building. If you wanna pick out a particular floor, you can, if you had something to say to a particular floor, there's your buttons. There's your selection right there. Talk to whoever you want to. Now, you have one more thing. Anybody ever talk on these? Use one of these?
I had one in my house like that.
Yeah, that's what we get a lot, but we work our butts off to keep these maintained. but nobody wants to use them. We have handsets over here for y'all to take up in the building.
You get who's has the Knoxbox keys?
Ta-da!
There we go. Okay. What do we have?
One of those.
Hopefully that's every.
We don't have a key for.
It's like I get
There
to
it is.
my master.
Here's the, here, I'll let you hang on to that. This fits, you'll all notice it has an N on it, just kinda like the logo that I'm bringing with all over the place. And this N right here, and the one that's on the display. That will open up anything that has that logo on it, including this box where your
Can we get
telephone
one of those
handsets-
keys on our Knoxbox key?
Yes, I'll get you one later. I thought I had.
That's fine, that's fine. That way, in case, God forbid, that key falls off or.
Thought I had one in my
Stuck in
pocket.
somebody's
Yeah,
pocket.
I have one, yeah.
It's, well, we pulled it out, it's not one
Oh.
there.
So you have these, that if y'all choose to, can be handed before you go up in the building for communication. Like, that's great. There's jacks, I don't know if you see one around the corner.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
around the corner, usually.
elevator.
Usually at the
Elevator
exit.
lobby?
Yeah. You'll see it, you can plug it in, you don't have to dial in, you don't have to do anything, it's automatic. It makes a connection and it will start, it'll start flashing. This light will start flashing, beeping from wherever it has, once again, just like the speakers, has one for every floor. It'll come in and beep. Doesn't put a trouble on the panel, or it shouldn't put a trouble on the panel or
Can
anything.
we try it out?
And, what's that?
Can I try it out?
Sure. Oh. I think it has a set screw in it.
Dylan, where's your screwdriver?
I had a set screw in it.
It's missing a screw.
Fix it. Plastic cover.
I'm not here for y'all. From the police.
Okay, well, let me finish here for just a
Sure,
second.
sure.
Okay, so when you call in, you'll notice it has
Mike.
a button on it. This isn't like your walkie-talkies. You don't have to let go so the guy on the other end can talk. You can leave that, you can push that down hold it all the time. Same on this end. Same on this end. You can hold it down and talk just like a regular phone conversation. Y'all can talk over each other. You don't have to talk and say over or anything like that. Y'all can just, if y'all are both holding it down,
But
you
you
can
do have
talk
to
just
push
like a
it to
regular
talk.
telephone. Uh-oh. I did that. So, but when you do talk, you do have to have it pushed down. I mean, if you wanna let it go when you're done talking, you can. I just kind of put my fingers where I have pressure on it all the time.
Now, if you don't have it pushed, you can still hear if somebody's talking
Yes,
to you.
yes, you can. But for them to hear you, you're gonna have to push it down to continue to talk.
Now, if we've got one plugged in on the first floor and one plugged in on the second floor, but nobody's keying their mic, is that, are they still working? So it's only if somebody
Yes.
is actually
And
holding
the
that.
and
So
the
they can be
person-
plugged in,
Yes,
and they're not gonna cancel each
and
other out.
the person on the second floor can hear the person on the first floor and can hear the person right here.
All three of them, if they're holding down, can talk over each other.
Yeah.
And I
It's a
know
little confusing.
our guideline used to say,
Conference
hey, make
calls.
sure you unplug it because it would prevent somebody, I mean, that guideline.
Not that I'm
that
aware of,
guideline's
honestly,
old.
we don't test it that way just a
Yeah.
whole lot, but in my experience, you can have 10 of these, it's like.
I'm sure in the past,
if
somebody
anybody
had a
grew up in the
system-
country, 30
Yeah.
years old as I am, you had party lines.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
talked to
Okay.
everybody and
All right.
kind of the same way, because the circuiting is kind of set up like old school telephone.
Okay.
It's not high-tech digital like you used to your cell phones and
So how-
phones in office buildings now. Your office.
If we're in here, how will we know if somebody's trying to call us?
The corresponding buttons will flash and hopefully it
So
will
we
beep
have to
and-
watch to make sure.
Yes.
There's
Well,
no audible
Will it be
alarm.
Yes.
auditory? Yeah.
Yes. Oh. Wow.
Wow.
Here's my
Wow.
moment of truth to see if I have to work on something. We're not big fans because we know y'all have excellent communication without them. Sometimes you.
Yeah.
you-
All these radios don't work real
Yeah,
well in here.
Sometimes they can be cumbersome, because I know y'all sometimes
Yeah.
come in with 60, 70 pounds on
But,
your back. You
I
don't
mean,
need
the only
something
place
else
you're
in
gonna
your
be
life.
using these is where there's not smoke. So you're not gonna be using this on the fire floor.
Correct.
Yeah, you've never
But you
been
can,
bumped
all the
on
other
the
stuff that
radio.
you have going on the floors above, below you, the resource pool,
Right.
all that, you might be able to talk,
You might wanna
they're
talk.
probably quicker to talk on
Right,
that than the radio.
right.
Cause everybody can talk.
Everybody's on radio.
So I can,
We call Unit 91 radio.
there we go.
There it is.
There you go.
Okay,
There's what you're gonna hear. And you see, and it doesn't do anything.
okay.
No trouble, no nothing.
Okay.
And it says fire phones level 1.
Excellent.
You push it to select it. Fire command.
Yeah. Right, right.
That's how it'll work all the way through the building.
That's true.
It does work. Okay, and when you're done, hang it up. If he calls back in, once again, it makes an automatic connection. As soon
So
as
if
he
you don't
plugs
hang
in-
it up, it'll keep on?
No, it actually won't do anything, just the light will go. See, he still has it plugged in, so it came back in again.
I think I just replugged it. So now, once it signals it, then you have to push it there?
Yes.
And then
Yes,
that allows
you-
you to be able to talk.
Correct, that completes
Kind
the
of
circuit.
acknowledges that you're. you have to
It
put
doesn't really
yourself-
acknowledge, it just completes the circuit.
Right, okay.
And that's how you, and like if he unplugs and walks away, that'll just stay on, it's not hurting anything, it's just everybody walks by and goes, what's that red light? Is it still plugged in, what's fine? No, it will be. Oh, right, so, it's not fine.
How many phones are in that box?
One, two, three, four.
Four, okay.
And that typically goes by the size of the building.
Right.
Kind of like how many toilets you have in the bathroom and everything else, it's guided by code. If y'all decide y'all need 20 more, just
Right.
tell building management, they'll love you for spending that money.
Send you an email.
Chief, do you see any packets? I know that's not his, that's not his,
Yeah, we have to open up the fire closet.
give, see if this key will work on that fire support box. Let's see if there's any packets in there.
Yep.
Now, you might check your keys in here,
Yeah,
they probably have full station keys, the key I was looking for, there you go,
How many
probably
packets
on
are
there.
there?
Stuff in there.
At least
But we
seven,
can-
and then, 4 or 5 of these manila envelopes. I can't see what's in them without taking them apart. It looks like they're for individual, occupants, maybe? No. Going up, find out.
Oh, here you go.